Hello and welcome back. Chuck, could you please remind us what we've discussed so far and just give us a glimpse of what's ahead in this section of our discussion?
Sure. Back when we started the interview, we talked about types of meetings and requirements of meetings. And we moved to how you do effective meetings and some of the special meetings that you have. So I think that's enough probably on meetings. I would like to maybe move and let's talk about elections and how you get elected to the executive boards. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
So first, let's look at who's eligible to be on a board. So to be a board member and executive in your association, you have to be a homeowner. You have to own your own unit there. The state would tell us that we need a minimum of 3 board members. That's the minimum board you can have. Some associations obviously are larger. They're going to have 5. Some will have 7. But that is the minimum requirement, is 3.
Okay.
You probably also notice on the slide there's a description up there. It says non-individual entities. Do you understand that?
I did notice that,
Yeah.
Chuck. I don't have a clue what that means.
Well, maybe I can clarify that
Okay,
a little
great.
bit. Think of it as a partnership or a partner that owns maybe a unit in your association. They could actually be an officer, I mean a president, a vice president,
Okay.
secretary, treasurer, something of that nature. Or maybe you have a trustee or a beneficiary of a trust that owns a unit in your association. They would also be eligible to be an officer, and they don't necessarily, they can't be a board member, but they could be an officer.
Okay.
Or maybe you have a limited liability company or a member of them that has a unit in your association. They could also be an officer, but not a director. So those are the type of people that are eligible to be on your board or to be an officer on your board. There are certain people who cannot be on your board and are not eligible to be.
Okay.
A person, or maybe the person's spouse, maybe a blood relation, adoption, and if they are functioning as a community manager for your association, then they cannot be on your board or they can't be an officer in your association.
Okay.
That would also apply to master associations. So those are the people
Good point.
who would be eligible to be on your board.
Okay.
Okay? So how do you get nominated?
Good question.
All right. Well, 30 days prior to an election or an event for an election, your association is going to send out to all the homeowners a nomination form. And on that form, then a person can self-nominate themselves, or the board actually can nominate people if they want to, or if you have a nominating committee, they can also do that. Now, with that form, when it goes out, the board can decide at that point in time that when the nominations come back, let's say you don't have the exact number, you might have an equal number or less than, then the board can decide if that's the situation, the nominations come back, the election is over, and it's done by acclamation.
Okay.
But they must do that prior to sending out the nomination forms.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Otherwise, then ballots will have to go out.
Good to know.
So that's how you get nominated.
Okay.
All right?
Uh-huh.
So after the nominations, then there's the election phase.
Okay.
So the nomination forms will come back, and on that form will be a disclosure by anyone who is self-nominated that will say, for instance, I don't have a conflict of interest within the community, and I'm a member in good standing.
Okay, excuse me. I'm interrupting you again, but
That's okay.
Can you clarify what good standing means, please?
Basically, good standing means you don't owe the association any money.
Oh, okay.
You're current on your assessments, and maybe you had a construction fine, but you've taken care of that. So you
Okay.
don't owe the association any money.
Okay.
That disclosure on the form is important because when the ballots go out, that disclosure information is going to be included there. So you want to be sure that when you disclose that information that you're factual, you're in good standing, and you're good. You don't have to worry about that type of a situation.
Great.
Terms of office. Normally 3 years would be the extreme amount that you could serve between elections.
Okay.
More likely, your governing directives and bylaws will probably say election every 2 years. I'm thinking that's what most of them, but you need to look because it will specify what it should be. Be a staggered term, and what I mean by that is like my board that I'm on, we're a 3-member board. So every year we elect 1 member, and the following year we would elect 2. So therefore, you never elect the whole board at the same time, which it's not a good situation to do that. You can look at the governing directives to be sure that you're following them in accordance with what would be the normal way.
Sure.
There are some exceptions we don't need to go into now, and it has to
Okay.
do with what the declarant might say with somebody on your board.
Okay.
So that's how you get nominated, how you get elected.
All right.
All right?
So you mentioned acclamation.
I did.
Can we go back to that a little bit and talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. So when your nominations come back in, and if the number of vacancies on your nomination form is equal to or less, and the board made the determination before they sent the nomination forms out, that if that case where you had equal to or less members for the election, then you could declare the election done by acclamation, and your new directors would be elected and take office at that time.
Okay.
However, if that determination was not sent out with the nomination forms and they come back, then you don't have any choice. You must do the election by secret ballot at that point in time. The other requirement for a secret ballot, which is the best of the requirements, would be if you get more people running for the board and you have vacancies. I might idea that's ideal, because that means you
Yes.
have a lot of interest in your community. So when that situation occurs,
Exactly.
secret ballot's the way you're going to do it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's assume that we have lots of people running for office.
Yes.
Are people allowed to campaign?
Absolutely. You know,
Cool.
the state would say you can campaign for 90 days ahead of the actual date when you actually have the election.
Okay.
So that's the way that happens. Candidates can send out candidate information statements. You know, they normally are 1 page in length, and that can be done several ways. Perhaps you have a newsletter. You can put it in your newsletter. You could send it out by email. So that's all done at communication expense. And maybe you have a closed circuit TV. You could do it that
Oh,
way. So
good
you can
idea.
they can distribute their candidate information that
Uh-huh.
way. Now, if they don't want it that way, they can send it out themselves.
Okay.
And so they can request from the association the addresses of everyone, okay? You can give them the addresses, but you don't include the names.
Oh,
That's
okay.
more of a confidential problem. So they get the addresses, they send it out, and they can include their 1-page letter, information about why they're qualified for
Okay.
the board. I might point out also that if the association provides those addresses, then the candidate that wants them would tell you and certify that they're using them only for an election process.
Oh,
And
okay.
if they use them for something else, the board is protected. They're not liable for any misuse of that list.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way that goes.
Okay.
So the information has been sent out, and we're ready now to determine who's
Ready to
going to
have
be
an
elected to
election.
the board.
All right. Okay.
So
before the election, let's take a break,
sounds good to me.
and we'll be right back.
Right.